Hey, hello. Here is my problem progress presentation. So, my problem focus that I have noticed a lot in elementary schools is focusing on mental health of elementary age students. Oh. So, focusing on the mental health problems of elementary age students. I've noticed from all ages, from TK or even preschool all the way up to sixth grade, and of course, middle school and high school. There have been increasing mental health problems among these students, anxiety, depression, a whole issue, a whole range of different problems. And these problems have been up and coming in the recent years. And especially since COVID, people like to blame it on that, which if it's true or not. But mental health problems have always been there for children, but they've been becoming more and more recent and more prevalent over the recent years. So some people blame COVID, but there's so many other issues that are going on um, that it needs to be addressed. So any of these problems, so like social media pressures, social and academic pressures, isolation when students aren't getting interaction. So that's where the COVID part comes from. Even socioeconomic disadvantages, um, and trauma, childhood trauma, of course, are big issues when it comes to different kinds of mental health issues. And all these issues are very valid reasons, but we can't, um, and that's why they are such a problem. And what we need to start focusing on is these students and how we're going to help these students and help these families to help their students. So, where's my little thing? Oh, and then this obviously the population that is um, affected by this are the students and their families. And because these students are so anxious or depressed or whatever, it's affecting their schoolwork, it's affecting the teachers. So everyone involved in this child's life is affected, but of course, the student themselves the most. So, some key learning theories. You can't see at the top. Never done this. Some key theories and behavioralist and learning theories that I'm going to talk about for mental health and how they inform my problem and they're going to help me solve the problem is behavioralism, cognitivism, and social learning theory. So, the first one I'm going to talk about is behavioralism. So, behavioralism um, was originally made by John B. Watson, and his idea was people learn through observation and they learn from their environmental around them, their environment, the stimuli in their environment. And with behavioralism, it also talks about conditioning, so reinforcements and punishments based on that environmental stimuli. So you see things and you do them, but also things happen in life where you get affected by it through you're praised or you're punished. So you're going to keep doing it or you're going to stop doing it. And with that, PBIS is a great way to support students through behavioralism. And what PBIS is positive behavioralism um, interventions and support. So it's a way to help students and provide intervention for them through positive support. So PBIS really focuses on creating a positive and predictable environment for students so they can feel safe, so they can feel positive in school. And it helps academically, socially, all these kinds of things. So PBIS focuses on giving rewards to positive behavior to increase that behavior, which is behavioralism and conditioning, operate conditioning. Um, so the more they'll do them, the more positive. So if they do positive coping mechanisms when they're anxious or feeling down about themselves, if they can figure out ways to regulate themselves when they're stressed, go on a walk, color, journal, communicate how you're feeling. Those are all positive ways the student is reacting, and then they get a reward of some kind. And then it also helps to minimize negative behaviors because those won't be rewarded, but the people in charge will see those negative behaviors and then want to praise how the student can help or how the student can help themselves. Yeah. And so the next one is cognitivism. So this one is all about people's mental process. So more instead of focusing on behavior, it's how people learn and how they think and how they remember things. And this was John Piaget. So he was like the next after behavioralism. So it's based around how people think. So thinking about behavioral or not behavioralism, cognitism and how we're going to help these students with these mental health issues, we want to know what stage of development these are. So Piaget also came up with the cognitive development stages. So for elementary school, there's going to be two main stages: pre-operational, which is 2 to 7, so preschool to second grade, depending, and then also the concrete operational, which is for ages 7 to 11, or grades 2 through 6 when we're done with elementary school, obviously. And depending on those stages, we want to use different levels and different types of support to support students. Because if we do the wrong kind of supports for different ages, it's not going to stick in their brain and it's not going to make sense to them to help them. So when we're working with the younger students, so the preschool to second grade students, we want to focus on ways like using pictures and representatives and like charts, so like emotion charts to show how they're feeling. And then we also want to like do like therapy play almost, so like doing puppets, role playing, but not this child itself necessarily. And then also doing that. And then with older kids, we want to do like role playing, storytelling, um, problem solving. So these different ways, depending on how old the child is and where they are mentally, can help the children, and the methods we're using actually stick in their brain and they can think about it. So the third and final learning theory is social learning theory, and this one was done by Albert Bandura. So he focuses mainly on the observation, so how people see others and then learn that behavior. So unlike behavioralism, which was observing and understanding and seeing environmental stimuli and reactions, this is just behavioral, just people, not behavioral, just people in the social learning, learning through socialization. And then with this, what we want to do is have adults and peers modeling healthy behaviors. So ways to cope, ways to interact, ways to just speak to others in a positive way. And through modeling that, we'll hopefully teach that child who is having these issues to do better and react and talk and cope with themselves in a more positive light. And then also through peer mentoring, um, connecting with students who either have the same issues and know how to help themselves, or with students who just have a positive attitude in life, and could be a good role model or influence on these children. And then also doing SEL activities to help them replicate healthy behaviors and teach them how to have healthy behaviors through role playing and modeling and all that kind of stuff. So next up is addressing the problem. So what we first want to do is identify the key students who need that additional help. And of course, when we want to address the problem, we want to address all students. We want to observe all students. We want to assess and give the surveys to all students. But when we first get a program, we want to do it with the key students to make sure that this program can help people, that it is making a difference and it's doing all this stuff. And we want to do that most at risk, which at risk is a loose term because you think the at-risk kids are the disruptive ones, it's the ones that are obviously anxious and depressed and all that, but with anxiety and depression, it's often the quiet, reserved kids who don't talk and don't like to answer, but they can be doing good in their grades, like how I was. I didn't talk in class. I still don't really. But did I have anxiety? Yes, I would have benefited from different techniques in elementary school. Um, but yeah, so at risk is a give and take term, but you can see that through observations if a student is quiet, if a student's loud. So opposite spectrums, but still everyone is at risk. Um, so yeah, identify those kids first who need that additional help first. And then also gather data from these students. So the data we want to collect is the survey, the assessment I was talking about, which I'll talk about that more later. That's my other assignment, the tools of assessment assignment. Um, so surveys, observations, behavioral reports, what if they're getting in trouble all the time, attendance reports, grades, all that kind of stuff. So with the key students, but also with other students who are going to need it eventually as the program rolls on. And then we also want to know what strategies are already in place. Also with the data, parent interviews if possible, if need be, just to get an idea at home, because hopefully the parent is cooperating with all this. And so, what strategies are already in use? Are the strategies working? Are they not working? What can we do to improve them? What can we do? Do we need to get rid of them altogether and try something new? So, we want to know that if something's already being done with that said student. So, now we have resolutions. So I know there's supposed to be only 2 to 3, but I put a 4th one, but this one's, like, super important. It's kind of a resolution. I would say it is. But it's making sure all community members, all people involved with that child are on the same page. So the teacher, admin, any support staff, the parent, very important because 'cause they're with their parent a lot. They need to be on the same page because if they're not, this student with their mental health issues and whatever it means to them, they're not gonna get the support they need. Not everyone is being supportive in the same way. Because if there's one person telling you to just suck it up, you're fine, it's all in your head, and then the teachers and admin are like, "Oh, you're okay, it happens to all of us." Those are 2 completely different, ideas being put into their head, and they don't know what to do. So if everyone's on the same page, everyone's helping the same way, we're supporting, all that, that's the best way to help that child. Anyway, now the second one, technically the first, or my first one, technically the second, is implement SEL practices at home or at not home, in the classroom. So this is very important, and SEL needs to be taught every day, and it doesn't necessarily mean 10 minutes here, SEL only. SEL should be a practice, not just a lesson. It should be all day long in English and math and PE in the cafeteria, in the hallway. We need to be teaching SEL to these students, social emotional learning to these students all day long so they can make it a practice themselves. They can implement the things we're teaching them into their life when they're not in the classroom, when they're at home, when they're at grandma's, when they're at their uncle's house, whatever they are. They can regulate themselves, they can be responsible because all these things will have a positive effect and they'll feel better about themselves and then hopefully lessen their anxiety or depression or whatever it is. So the next one is creating a space in the classroom that's positive, and not just the classroom, in the hallway, in the library, in the nurses, in the principal's office. If they get in trouble, they don't want to go in trouble and they're having all these thoughts, and then they're in the principal's office that looks like a jail cell. That's not going to help. They need a space that will calm them. They need a space that will keep them cool and collective. Because if they feel and safe, and if they feel safe, they're going to feel better. Especially in the classroom, you want calming areas so students can learn, be nice, be respectful, and things like that. And also and then also access to professionals. Um, at the end of the day, there are always going to be students that whatever we can do at school is not going to be enough. So having access to either professionals on campus, professionals referring students and families to professionals to get that help will make such a difference. And it's important to not refer them to therapy in secret. It should be something known. They should be proud that they're going to get help so they can be better. They can be a better person. And thankfully, the recent years, I feel like therapy has become like talked about, like everyone talks about it, and it's a good thing. It's a positive thing. So that will definitely help. And yeah, those are my resolutions. Oh, some SEL practices. I totally skipped that part. Um, so doing things like practicing mindfulness and reflections, ways to regulate your emotions and even just check what emotion am I feeling. That's the most important. You can't regulate yourself if you don't know how you're feeling. And then also like team building exercises. What are some other things? Teaching about reflection and journaling. All those kind of things help a student regulate themselves. And if they're regulated, they can calm their anxiety, they can calm their depression and just feel better in that space. So that's some SEL practices to do. I skipped that part, sorry. Um, Next up is the assessment of success. So again, this assessment is going to be the same as how we address the issue. We're going to gather that data, and how we gather that data has to be the exact same thing as to how we gathered it in the first place, because we want to compare the data to see if there's differences. Because if the data is different, if different formats, it's not going to be obvious to how, if there's any change. So the first thing is the survey. So the survey and the observations kind of go together for me. Depending on the age level, the students can do a survey for themselves, but if they can't read or write, they'll have to be observed. So, yeah, so the surveys and observations, and then also behavioral reports. Did the child's behavior change? Are they acting out more? Are they talking more? Are they talking less? Depending on where they started in the situation. And then grades and attendance. So grades can change if they're feeling better about themselves, if they're feeling better about school. Their grades may go up, they may stay the same, they may go down. They may not be on that constantly anxiety, need to get everything perfect. They may be a little more chill and grades may go down, but that's okay because they're not on the edge of everything at all times of the day. But also with attendance, that can be taken because it could go up because they will want to go to school, so parents have an easier time getting them to school. But at the end of the day, it's up to the parents to get that child to school. So, because they can drive themselves, they can go on the bus, they can walk to them, I guess. I don't know if first graders are allowed to walk to the bus by themselves. Um, But again, it's up to the parents to decide if they're gonna take that child to work today, if they have the means to take that child to school, if they have a car, if they have a bike, if they have feet to walk with. So attendance may go up, may not, grades may go up, grades may down, but hopefully the survey, the behavioral reports, and the observations, those are the main areas where you see a difference in the child um, answering questions. And I'll talk about the survey on the next page a little bit more. And yeah, I think that's about all for that one. Then finally, the future implications. So, I'll talk about the survey a little bit. So the survey is an assessment that was created to so either the older child reads and answers the questions, or it can be like more of an observation for younger kids and how they're acting and feeling. And some of the questions, they're not very deep. That's the first thing. It's a very light assessment. It's not going to dig deep into their soul. But it's gonna be like, "I have felt worried." Never, sometimes, all the time. Or questions like, "I belong?" Yes, no, sometimes, yeah. So it's not very deep, but with that, it's not a diagnosis. This assessment will not diagnose a student. That is not what this is for. It's just to get that first step in the door of how the child is feeling. What's going on in their brain? Do they need to be assessed? Do they need extra help somewhere else? Can we support this child in the classroom only, or do they need to be pulled out? Whatever the situation is, um, things like that. And then also, this diagnostic or the assessment um, doesn't know the child's family life. So we don't know exactly what's happening at home. So that could change how the test is. It could change if something happened at home that day. Are they going to ask these questions or answer these questions differently and things like that. And then also I try not to have like cultural or gender biases in this assessment, but we always have biases that we don't know. Students may have biases they don't know when answering these questions. So that's just something to consider. And then also results may vary. The day the child takes the test, they might be sad because they didn't get their favorite cereal for breakfast. They might be hungry, they're missing mom, or even it's that child's first time ever having a bad day, and so they took a horrible test. And if they took the test the next day, they'd answer the questions completely different. So again, this test, that's why it's not an assessment, or it is an assessment, it's not a diagnosis. Um, Results may vary. Some days they're feeling more anxious, so they'll say, "Yes, I'm always anxious." Or sometimes, "I don't feel anxious at all," so they'll say, "Never." So there's with that. So taking any kind of assessment like this, it has to be taken into considerations. So last but not least, oh, that is all. So thank you so much. I enjoyed this researching and making this. I love SEL early childhood, so love teaching SEL with the kids. And yeah, and thank you for this class. And here are my references. I, of course, referenced your lecture notes because those were great resources. And then some other people about mental illness and SEL. And yeah, thank you so much. Goodbye.